Hi everyone, my name is Jijiashvili. I'm a senior analyst at Omdia. Thanks so much for joining this MEF's webinar called Mobile Games Trends 2021. We have a great panelist lined up for you today. We've got Jonathan Stringfield, VP and Global Head of Business of Marketing at Activision Blizzard Media. We got Kristan Rivers, the CEO and co-founder of AdInMo, and Juan Francisco Nucci, which is General Director at AWG. We will. I'm really looking forward to speaking to them in about 10 minutes, right after I present to you some of the key trends from my perspective as an analyst looking at mobile games and some adjacent areas. And really, this will serve as a jumping off point, if you will, for our conversation kind of moving forward. And presuming that you can already see my slides coming through. Great, okay, I'm getting a thumbs up, great. So let's just dive into it. So there'll be two sections. I'm not going to go on for very long because I want to save as much time as possible for the discussion with the panelists. So first, there'll be two sections. First, I'll just talk about some trends in mobile gaming, cloud gaming, and subscriptions, and how they all interlink and how they're all developing. And then I'll have a section on esports as well and what's going on in that space. And then we'll carry on our conversation from there on. So mobile games is the largest segment in as far as the end user spend goes globally on games. It's going to be it's already about 70% of total spend on games. So if we look at the PC games, console games, and mobile games. This proportion will more or less be maintained over the next 5 years. And mobile games are expected to generate about $130 billion by 2025. So it's of course a huge opportunity. It's highly competitive, just because there is a lot of opportunities there. Of course, there's as many pitfalls there as well. Some of that stuff we'll be talking about as well. So we'll definitely be touching on things like monetization and how that is changing as we move forward. Another aspect that I kind of just wanted to jump straight into this because cloud gaming is become such a hot topic. In the past about 3 years or so, you've had major launches such as Xbox Game Pass with xCloud and Stadia and Amazon Luna and so on. And it's really fascinating to me because if we look at the total addressable base of devices, so this is in 2024, you're going to have billions of devices capable of potentially receiving cloud gaming services. So basically game makers who at the moment are only developing for game consoles, for example, are looking at cloud gaming as an opportunity to reach a much broader audience beyond just 250 odd million installed base of game consoles in 2024. So as I said, in about 4 years' time, you have billions and billions of other types of devices, such as smartphones, even smart speakers with screens, tablets, and smart TVs, and so on. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons why companies are increasingly drawn to cloud gaming. We're quite bullish on the growth of cloud gaming over the next 5 years. At the moment, it's less than 1% of the total games revenue that I showed you earlier. But we think this could grow as much as 7.5% by 2025 if things pan out as well as many of us are hoping that it will pan out. So we expect the total kind of cloud gaming content and cloud PC service spent to be about $12 billion by 2025. big thing kind of supporting this growth of cloud gaming in the future is this ongoing rollout of 5G technologies all around the world. And again, leaning on Omdia's market data for different network technologies, we expect globally 5G to be responsible for 30% of the subscriptions. So that's quite a very kind of respectable number, I think, given the short space of time, and it could be more depending on how the rollouts go. So that's definitely an area that telcos, in particular, have really taken on board. The cloud gaming, they see it as a way to really drive the usage of 5G, and kind of they're looking at cloud gaming as the key use case for consumer 5G tariffs. Therefore, it's unsurprising that just telcos are kind of jumping into this space and embracing cloud gaming in a big way. So these are some of the telcos around the world who have partnerships with cloud gaming services, or they have their own cloud gaming services. And we expect more of them to emerge over the over the next few years. Another kind of thing, it's hard to talk about cloud gaming without talking about subscriptions. Subscriptions is another is another growing trend in gaming and mobile gaming. And I wanted to kind of show you this list of top 15 top grossing mobile games in 2020, according to Sensor Tower. And it's very interesting because 8 out of the top 15 top grossing mobile games on Android and so Google Play Store and Apple App Store in 2020, 8 of them, so just over half of them, utilize subscription. And this is just on mobile games, and this is a broader industry trend. So we're, as I mentioned, we're seeing the likes of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which of course is subscription-based, and so are other services like Stadia and like Amazon Luna and many others. So it's definitely a growing trend, subscriptions in general. And again, this is something that we will discuss during the panel. I wanted to show you this market map that I put together just to kind of try to dissect the different types of cloud gaming services and subscription services that are already available on this market. And while dissecting, I realized that it also shows how complex, increasingly sorry, this is, if someone can go on mute, thank you. It just shows how complex this space is increasingly becoming. So you of course have the game publishers and engines on one side. You have the game content subscription services, and there are players in between as well, including Activision Blizzard, of course, one of the pioneers of subscription services. In terms of World of Warcraft and other games that they offer. You have now intersected with that, there's cloud gaming providers, and there's loads of companies in between, of course, the ones, there's lots of familiar logos there that I'm sure you have seen, and there's esports services as well. So this space is increasingly complex in terms of monetization, in terms of technologies involved, platforms, and so on. So it's a rapidly developing space, and again, really look forward to discussing this in just a few minutes. Just a few things on esports as well. So esports itself, it is, if we look at in revenue terms, esports revenue, when we talk about things like sponsorships and attendance tickets and so on, it's very small market compared to the gaming as a whole. However, it brings lots of opportunities for all sorts of companies, of course, gaming companies included, in order to do things like drive engagement. And as I mentioned, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but the reason why esports is so compelling is because there's a wide variety of content suitable for anyone with any type of taste in games. Usually it's a well-attended, at least pre-COVID. I'm sure this will come back eventually as well. Regardless, it's watched by millions, and esports was able to quickly adapt to this kind of digital-only format. And there's just lots of developments all around the world, really, that makes this really exciting space. Mobile esports in particular, we're quite bullish on and quite excited about. We think that really mobile esports can really democratize esports for a much broader audience than what we're seeing today. And yeah, finally, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about. Telcos in particular are quite excited about the space. 5G penetration is expected to be so the penetration is expected to increase quite rapidly over the next 5 years, particularly in North America and in developed markets. And as I mentioned, it's not, this opportunities extends beyond telcos and game makers. Any company can really utilize esports to drive engagement with a very young demographic who are, of course, very attractive in terms of gaining them as clients or as customers. And yeah, definitely has potential for big returns. Okay, so I think I did quite well covering all those points in a short space of time. It's of course not everything and not all the trends that are happening in the games and mobile game space, of course. But nevertheless, I thought I'd just kind of get those out to kind of get the conversation started. I believe so I stopped sharing the screen. Cool, excellent. So now that's done. I now ask all my panelists to introduce themselves. Tell us about your company, what you do. Let's start with Juan. Juan, how about you? Oh, you're on mute. Classic.
Oh, classic. Okay, we did it. Okay. Okay. So hello, George, and good afternoon to my colleagues on the panel, and thank you very much for being our guide and our moderator today. My name is Juan Francisco Di Nucci. Since 2004, I'm General Director for Avatar Group. And with a team of more than 100 professionals, AWG operates in 24 countries of Latin and Africa, developing technology in partnership with mobile operators to monetize digital content and services.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Hi, everyone. Jonathan Stringfield. I oversee global business marketing, measurement, research, and insights for Activision Blizzard. That's the company that makes quite a few AAA titles you're probably familiar with, ranging from Call of Duty to Candy Crush to World of Warcraft. And across the media and esports business, my team oversees things like, again, ROI measurement, talking to the market in terms of advertising opportunities, again, across both our ads platforms and our games, and obviously sponsorship opportunities in esports. And looking forward to chatting.
Excellent. Thanks, Jonathan. Kristan?
Right. Hopefully I've unmuted myself properly. I'm glad, Juan, you did that first as a reminder to me. Hi, everybody. I'm Kristan Rivers. I'm co-founder and CEO of AdInMo. We're a platform for putting ads directly into the gameplay of games. So if you're not familiar with this type of immersive, non-intrusive ad units, instead of video ads that take over the screen, or banner ads down at the bottom of the screen that nobody ever clicks on. We place the ads directly into gameplay. So you can imagine it's billboards in a racing game, or a puzzle game where maybe the puzzle pieces themselves are ad units.
Excellent. Cool. I wanted to kick this off by talking about the key trends in the industry. It could be mobile trends, or it could be broader kind of games industry trends. I've already talked about some of my ones. So, Jonathan, do you want to kick off with one or two kind of key trends that you are seeing, and then I'll ask others as well.
Sure, just one or two. So I think, on the gaming side, there's a couple interesting drumbeats going on. I think one, and you spoke a little bit about 5G at the onset, that, things like mobile, PC, and console, they're all growing considerably, but where we're seeing the biggest growth is mobile. And I think what we're seeing there then is a lot of attention in terms of the types of franchises or the types of games that we might want to see in the mobile space, inclusive of formerly AAA console or PC exclusive titles that are starting to matriculate to mobile. So I think that has interesting implications for how, when, and where people interact with gaming more generally, and I think some of the opportunities that are available there. On the esports side, since you brought it up, I think there's a lot of interesting shifts going on, one of which is, of course, we're operating in a world where we're completely virtual. That's okay, because esports can be played at the highest level virtually. So that's an area where I think some of the unique attributes of that particular platform are quite strong. But I think on the broader scale, it's a lot of maturation in terms of the businesses around esports, wherein I think the folks that are kind of on the leading edge are really looking to how can we make sure that the business models that we're building are durable and things that can continue to create a healthy ecosystem. I think there's a lot of implications there in terms of how we speak with marketers and how we transact with franchises.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, thanks. Juan, how about you? What are you seeing from your perspective?
Well, yeah, from my perspective, I would say that one of the trends would be like bringing all the processing power to the cloud. Taking all that processing power to the cloud, together with the arrival of 5G, cloud gaming as the killer app for the new network infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, thanks. And Kristan?
Yeah, I think what Jonathan was saying about mobile gaming continuing to grow and probably being one of the kind of most rapid growth opportunities that we've seen in gaming. That's certainly one of the things that we've seen already. I mean, before COVID happened, mobile gaming was popular, right? I think it was Kantar Group that said 2/3 of millennial and Gen Z audiences would rather give up social media or TV than their games. And then, of course, COVID hit, and last year, according to App Annie, mobile gameplay time increased by about 40%. We've certainly seen that in the traffic within our own platform. So I think that's probably the big story from last year. And then maybe kind of doing a little kind of hint to what may be coming ahead in the conversation today. I think one of the things now that game developers are starting to think about is new ways of monetizing all these players, both due to just this influx of gamers coming in, and then of course industry changes happening. We did a survey with Pocket Gamer late last year with game developers, and almost half of them said they were already seeking new monetization methods. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the trends that we'll continue to see going forward.
And that's a perfect segue, because one of the first things I wanted to bring up with all of you was monetization. And let's stick with you, Kristan, in terms of kind of these innovative monetization. And we've seen some of the game makers fell through some pitfalls in terms of some monetization, such as like loot boxes and stuff. But I feel like we're moving away from that. But nevertheless, I think there is no kind of a silver bullet for monetization. My personal belief that it will be going forward. It will be a combination of many different monetizations, right? So it will be one-off purchases, microtransactions, subscriptions, in-game advertising. So kind of for in-game advertising, I feel like there's so many ways you can do that wrong. And we've seen the bad press coverage of certain games, I'm not going to name and shame them, not doing in-game advertising very well. So from your perspective, how can game makers avoid that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, in-game advertising is hard, and it's always a balance of monetization versus retention and churn and gamer experience. That's one of the challenges of in-game play, any kind of in-game advertising, whether it's the immersive type that AdInMo does, or whether it's your traditional kind of interstitial ads. I think the one of the big industry moves that we see, and we're very happy with, is click attribution is going away in many ways. And we call it the curse of the click. And David D'Angelo at InMobi said that click-through rates and click-through attribution should have gone away in games 15 years ago. So it's a real pain point, I think, for everybody. As a developer, you're driving users out of your game experience, and as a gamer, you're being driven out of it. You're breaking immersion, and you're being driven out of the game experience. So we really, this is why AdInMo exists. We really like the idea of keeping that gamer within within that game experience, this kind of non-intrusive ads. At a different event I was at, there was a great term that Nate Barker at Calibri had said. He called it, he said, ads should be visible but not annoying. And I think that's it's a great way to do it. So from AdInMo perspective, we want these ads to be visible. We want them to be memorable. We want them to hopefully positively impact the game experience. And they should be non-cannibalizing to other types of ad revenue that you have, or other types of monetization methods that you should have. Our view is always to try and create these things as incremental revenue. But you're right. There's not going to be a single business model. I think all these different models, whether it's ad-supported, free-to-play, IP, etc., all these different business models must coexist within the gaming ecosystem. There's no one way to do this correctly.
Yeah. Thanks, Kristan.
I agree with that. I mean, I think often when we're asked, how do you do these types of experiences in games that people are really invested in and love, and in many cases have been playing for decades, the answer is carefully, and also where it makes sense. And I think what that then means is that there are a wide variety of ways in which you can potentially transact with customers, and candidly, it has to make sense within the context of what the experience the player is looking for by merit of being within the game and the mechanics of the game. This also means you just need to also have a degree of understanding in terms of, what are people looking to get out of that experience, such that, to the point before, it can be non-obtrusive and what have you. But the long and short of it is that, the old, methods of more interruptive advertising, of, privileging a view over the experience of the user, like, has to be dispensed. And I think that's, been a little touch and go at times in the larger gaming world, but something that we're definitely getting a lot better at, and in particular on the publisher side, something we think a lot about, because again, games are our lifeblood, and we want to make sure that our players keep coming back.
Excellent. And yeah, Jonathan, as I mentioned during my presentation, Activision in many ways, Activision Blizzard has been a pioneer in terms of offering different types of monetization depending on which target demographic you're going after. So World of Warcraft has had subscriptions for over a decade, and with King as well. So you've had ability to offer games for free, with, of course, things like rewarded advertising and so on, which from my understanding is actually, even though ads get kind of bad rep, actually many users don't mind them. They actually quite like getting free things for watching an ad or two. So I guess one question I had for you, Jonathan, is how do you balance then, and how do you, what's the decision process there in terms of deciding which monetization options to use for which game?
I mean, I think it goes back to what I was noting before in terms of what are the mechanics of the game, and then what is the use case of the user, right? So, taking where we do something like rewarded ads, right? It could be the case that, by merit of asking for a little bit of attention from the user, again, it's always opt-in, we never force the ad, they get a booster out that can help with the level. So in many cases, what we've seen is that, to your point, one, they tend to enjoy the ads. Two, if we're doing tests and we turn them off, people ask for them back, because there's definitely a use case of folks that, again, maybe they want to purchase, a candy hammer or something like that to help on, but maybe they don't like to go that route and instead feel like, well, watching an ad isn't the same as buying, something in app, and therefore that's what I'm going to do to get past the level. So, in the mindset of that particular user, they're looking for achievement, right? They play the level to get to the next level, and so on and so forth. So anything that can tap into that is definitely going to help. So you take that mentality, right, where you're focusing on the player first and what their needs and expectations are, and you kind of copy paste that to any number of very different platforms, whether it be World of Warcraft and subscription-based models or otherwise. And again, what emerges is a pattern in terms of like, what will the player want to do to transact with the entertainment experience relative to, again, the wide variety of options. And sometimes you're going to get it right, sometimes you're going to get it wrong. But I think as it pertains to advertising and marketing, opportunities, starting with the least obtrusive but most beneficial to the player mindset is going to be the right one almost 100% of the time.
Excellent. Thanks, Jonathan. Juan, what's your thoughts on kind of the whole monetization trends, and subscriptions is something we've talked about quite a lot.
Sure, yes. Well, you were talking about advertising, and advertisements require audience. So for the moment, I don't believe cloud gaming have the audience that the other channels have. And so I believe we have like 3 different revenue streams, possible monetization stages. First, what we are used to see right now, that is all-you-can-eat subscriptions, or a subscription model, that for a fixed model, for a fixed monthly amount, you will have access to a limited gallery of titles. Then we have paid games. That means that you pay for each game. And what I believe is similar to what you were saying, that we are going to face a hybrid, like between subscription and paid. And this is the one I believe have the greatest opportunity. In emerging markets, I believe this is the only one that we're going to have an opportunity. That is a hybrid between subscription and paid games. So it's for a minimum monthly value. Your subscription will give you access to a standard games gallery. And if you want to add other games, there's an option to buy them individually. Okay. This option, what really doing makes nice and great for emerging markets, that lowers the barrier to entry. So for a minimum accessible price, allows a personalized service, offer. And what we need in the emerging markets is to bring players, and give them the opportunities to live the experience.
And just to play the devil's advocate, Stadia tried doing that with the ongoing subscription service, and then where you buy games on top, and we all kind of know what happened there. So why do you think that will be successful in emerging markets? What makes it so different? Because I feel like games didn't react well to it.
Well, George, that technology, it's amazing and revolutionary if people can afford it and enjoy it, okay? And that's why playing premium games and video games in Latin America is a luxury that really few people can afford.
Yeah.
So the first thing is the entry price. You can't come here to Latin America and go to Africa and ask for a 25 subscription fee. No, because the GDP in emerging countries is less than a third of a developed countries, and the prices of devices, for example, consoles or gaming computers, is equivalent to more than 6 minimum salaries. Okay, so they can buy the consoles, they can buy the computers, and they can pay $25 per month. You need to have an entry price. What we really offer is a $9 per month solution, where you can have a nice catalog of games. And okay, if you went to us buy it for a blockbuster, okay, you can buy it independently, okay? Lumia, Stadia, all those kind of offers. First thing is that servers were not located in Latin America or Africa, okay? So latency was impossible. And the other thing is that the entry price was the barrier for the user was too high.
Well, okay, let's stay with you on that. And cloud gaming in emerging market is something that gets brought up a lot, and I've had a few client inquiries about it as well, asking why are we so downbeat on the emerging markets and cloud gaming? Because if I didn't show this during my presentation, but I believe that over the next 5 years will be primarily the developed markets that will drive most of the revenue for cloud gaming. And one of the main reasons is for that is you mentioned the accessibility to fast internet and also the access to servers, which of course are needed for the low latency. So why do you, I'm just trying to understand kind of what sort of near-term opportunities are there in like LATAM, in Africa, and other kind of emerging markets if the infrastructure is not there?
Well, yeah, sure. Network infrastructure has been one of the biggest challenges for cloud gaming since its inception. Okay, for all time they were talking about infrastructure. However, as I said, I still believe that the greatest challenge in Latin America is to offer a solution, both technological and content level, according to the market. About the network, as you asked, in Latin America we have 67% of internet penetration. And from that 67%, 22.5 is fiber to the home, and 36% is cable. Okay, so doing a fast math, we have 20% of the market of the population with enough bandwidth to have an optimal gaming experience. That for sure is fiber to the home, and you have connectivity, okay, direct to your house. Also, with the arrival of 5G, many doors are opening, making it even easier for cloud gaming solution to reach these markets.
Excellent. Okay.
COVID, COVID, before COVID, was like, okay, where the operators were still launching their SVOD, their video service, their music services, and this COVID, acts like an accelerator, and right now what they are looking for is a video game experience, and cloud gaming is a perfect solution for them.
Excellent. Thanks, Juan. I wanted to switch gears and go back to earlier conversation about kind of advertising in games and mobile games in particular. And Kristan, so we've had, we've all seen the changes that Apple is making to the IDFA, and I think that's a big talking point among the advertising world, which of course touches games quite a bit. So what's your view in terms of how that will impact the game's revenue in the short term?
Yeah, so I think it's not just my view. It's I think a kind of the industry overall is probably has become kind of accepting of the fact that in the near term, monetization is going to get hit. Ad monetization is going to be hit, and that's due to the nature of effectively all in-game advertising. Almost all in-game advertising today is performance-based. And watch this video, click here, go do something, or click on this banner ad that you didn't mean to click on and leave the game, and then I need to go back into the game, right? So that's going to go away. The ability of advertisers in particular to do the kind of click tracking that they need and following that user across to do their click-through attribution, that's all going away. And so that is going to have a near-term impact on CPMs, especially for performance CPMs. But at AdInMo, of course, we're really happy about this. We aren't performance advertising. We do brand advertising. So we think about the metrics that brand advertisers think about. And these aren't click-throughs. The brand advertisers that we work with, that we like, or as I always like to say, Ford can't sell a Mustang with a click-through, and Coca-Cola can't sell a can of Coke with a click-through. So this is a real opportunity for these types of advertisers to engage with audiences in a meaningful way, in a really impactful way. So, but the metrics have to change. So the kind of metrics that we think about, which are not click-through metrics, and don't require tracking this user intrusively with IDFA or AID, et cetera. We think about the kind of brand metrics. So recall, awareness, top of mind, affinity, intent. These are kind of metrics that we think about and that we deliver as ROI to ROI measurements. So this is what advertisers, this is both what advertisers are going to have to change, and I think game developers are going to have to think about this a bit differently as well in terms of how they monetize within the games. But the short answer is, I think in the near term, for most game developers, especially those that rely heavily on performance advertising, there's going to be a negative impact for them.
Yeah, and Jonathan, would you agree with that, or kind of again sticking with that? Apple's changes to IDFA. What sort of impact do you foresee?
Quite a few, and again, I've only been doing measurement research on mobile and advertising for the better part of my career, so I have absolutely nothing to say about this. Aside from the fact that to the point before, like the correlation between click-through performance and many real-world outcomes has been pretty clear to be virtually non-existent for a lot of business outcomes. So, if you're a business that is relying on trying to get game installs or what have you, I think it's quite meaningful. If you're trying to sell cases, cans, and bottles of product, maybe not. And again, I think that gets back to one of the bigger issues that I think we've seen that's coming hand in hand with IDFA, to tie it back a little bit more to your question, that the industry got very enamored with upfront targeting and things like tracking via click-through or otherwise. And I believe lost track in terms of what we were really trying to focus on for core business metrics in the process, which is to say that, IDFA from a broader industry perspective, in my mind, is actually something that's probably a net positive change, which I know is somewhat heretical depending on your POV, that candidly, this was precipitated by a lot of not very consumer-friendly behaviors that were happening. And then moreover, it was happening in a world where a lot of data was being used for various purposes, but we weren't confirming it. We were doing measurement, but we were conceivably measuring the wrong things, which is to say the actual performance of a given ad unit on, again, some more real life tangible outcomes. So had we taken that step back and looked at the metrics we were using, the types of measurement research that we were applying, we might have seen that, again, a lot of this micro-targeting and we can call it what it is, somewhat obtrusive targeting that IDFA allowed for, maybe wasn't doing awesome things and wasn't as effective as we thought it is. So it's forcing a bit of a reset, which again, I think is inherently healthy. The good news comes from, and I think in particular thinking through the lens of game advertising, is that, even if we're in a world where we have to rely on a run of network type strategy, that can be okay so long as you understand the relative audience and the value they provide. So we now have to shift our thinking in terms of, just looking at insights up front to, I think, the tail end, i.e. confirming via measurement research or otherwise what the outcome is. But where gaming, I think, can succeed and perhaps even thrive in this world is that, we have a lot of the attributes that any given advertiser would want as a baseline, right? Like it's brand safe. They're high quality environments for the most part. You're going to get a lot of engagement. That will pay dividends in terms of business outcomes. Again, assuming you're looking through the right aperture of measurement to make sure that, again, this is tied to whatever the outcomes are. So that's a long way of saying that, IDFA is going to change a lot of things, but I think it's more of a course correction for a lot of things that weren't going awesome, and maybe we weren't focusing on why they weren't going awesome.
Fascinating insight. That's great. That's definitely a very interesting perspective. Juan, did you have anything to add on to this, or I've got another question as well, if you prefer.
No, go to the next one.
So my question for you specifically was, you of course work with different brands and wanting to figure out kind of how are these brands utilizing your technology or just games in general to engage customers, build loyalty. I mean, we all know brands do that, but from your perspective, what have you seen?
Games are older than the culture. Okay, we as human beings, I believe that we were playful beings by nature. We love to play, we love to learn, and we interact more easily when there is joy and happiness. And that was something that was a no-brainer, and it's logical that brands are adopting games as a marketing tool to promote their loyalty, their relationship with their customers. What they find in games, I believe they found in games and esports, is a way to access customers, to give them a little bit of fun and entertain themselves, and at the same time generating a strong advertising impact, and without falling into that hated traditional advertising. And also what they are doing, capturing customers' attention, and with that customers' attention, they manage to obtain valuable data. Okay, so it's like a virtuous circle. You know, the customer has fun, they interact with the brand. The brand is not pushing the advertising, and they're getting back a relationship, a strong relationship with the customer, and a lot of data. So
and
something is growing, and we're gonna keep on growing.
And what sort of advice would you have from your perspective for brands? You know, having looked at esports and gaming, they know it's a growing space, and they know that they can attract a kind of young demographic and whatnot. But what would be your advice to those companies wanting to break into the space or use gaming to attract the right demographic?
Yes, I guess that I would say that they are going to leave a kind of a similar evolution to help the brands get into a relationship with the common sports, you know, the regular sports. I mean, first time they were sponsoring soccer, for sure, they were like just putting a brand and maybe sponsoring a team. And they then ended up being the owners of the teams, being experts on soccer, and actually building the community and helping to bring the awareness of the sport. Here, you know, there's a difference that they are going through technology also. So I believe that they have to make they will need to choose between just being sponsors and just being pushing teams and having their brands in the games, or to be part of the industry, be part of the ecosystem, and take a solid and an important position and place there. So that's something they will need to think about.
Thanks.
I think the challenge, sorry to jump in here,
No, please.
The challenge that we as an industry face is there's three stakeholders in, you know, as we think about advertising and games, and especially how do brands kind of come into this space, there's three stakeholders that all have to have a positive outcome. So of course there's the advertisers that we think of, and there's, you know, when you're an advertiser, you know, the average digital ad is viewed for less than 1 second. So, you know, for an advertiser, you need something new here. You're not getting your message out there. Game developers have a problem as well. These intrusive ads that we have today are a problem for them. Again, this Pocket Gamer survey that we did in conjunction with Pocket Gamer, about 3/4 of all game developers said they were looking for different types of ad units that were not intrusive, and similarly, gamers themselves. The third, you know, the third kind of stakeholder here is the gamers, and they're you know, they're getting just hammered with these ad units that they don't want, and in fact, they say about 85% of gamers, when surveyed, will say, look, if there's an intrusive ad, it reflects negatively on that brand. So not only was it not a positive experience for the gamer or the advertiser, it's actually a net negative experience. So this is this I think is why different types of brand ad units make sense. And whether that's the AdInMo kind of in-game play style of things, or whether it's other types of monetization. Esports, I think, is great. You know, esports becomes a way to, esports and game streaming become a way to allow the gamer themselves, first of all, for it to be a kind of more sponsorship model or product placement model, and allow that gamer to not just be a consumer of advertising, but potentially even being a broadcaster downstream to their tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of viewers. So I think that's really neat, and kind of coming back to this idea of different types of model. I worked for Paramount Pictures out in Asia for a number of years, leading the digital distribution team there. So, you know, in the movie business underwent a significant change with VOD, subscription VOD, et cetera. So other types of models that work, you know, as I said, product placement, sponsorship, you know, there are other ways to do this, and probably esports in particular is a great venue for trying these new types of business models within the gaming environment. But ensuring that all three of those stakeholders have a positive experience from this.
Thank you. So I can see we've had quite a few questions from the attendees. So It'd be good to tackle them. I've picked one out for you, Jonathan. So this question, it goes: mobile games is huge. Has it reached its peak during the COVID-19 pandemic? Will we see less downloads, actions, impressions, and paid games post-pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question, maybe the question, right? Because as you might suspect, this is something that I get asked quite a bit. Long and short, I think the first level said is that, yes, we've seen an acceleration in terms of virtually every metric as it pertains to the period that you described to the pandemic. No, that wasn't a change in trajectory, just rather an increase in it, which is to say that, a lot of game metrics, a lot of the engagement we've seen across mobile has been up and to the right for quite some time, but certainly, got a little bit of a boost from the pandemic. Whether or not it will stay after the fact, I mean, I think we're still in the game, right? As a colleague of mine very wisely said, a pandemic doesn't adhere to quarterly earning reports or annual returns or anything like that. So we're still in it. So I don't know because we're kind of still in the midst of it. However, what I think that is a kind of a safe takeaway is that there's probably a lot to be said about how culture and our expectations for entertainment has shifted probably irrevocably due to the pandemic. And I think there is something to be said about, what we found when we've been at home is, a desire for differential and better engaging forms of entertainment, to which, I do think it's going to be quite credible that a lot of folks that maybe if they weren't gamers before, they picked it up, or if they were gamers, they're doing, gaming more intensely, they're going to keep that habit with them as we go forward. But that is conjecture. I think we will, hopefully be able to have this conversation again in, say, 6 months together, not via Zoom, and can really do a decomp in terms of what happened. But my guess is that, as with a lot of things that we saw from the pandemic, sure, there was that increase, and we're going to keep seeing that. It's just a matter of, like, are we going to still see that the steepness of that increase continue?
Mm-hmm. Kristan or Juan, do you guys want to add something, or we can move on to another question?
Yeah, just something really small. Like, it's still, smartphone penetration is still growing. There are so many markets where still mobile games could grow, but I can actually assure that smartphone is playing a significant role in this expansion, and the industry worldwide is still expanding. It has much more way ahead.
Yeah, I think Juan, I completely agree with you on that. I think when you look at globally, and especially in places like LATAM and Asia, the vast majority of people's exposure to a gaming platform is going to be on mobile, right? It's probably not going to be PC. It's probably not going to be a several $100 console that sits under your TV. It's going to be mobile. So back to Jonathan's point, I certainly there was an acceleration, whether or not of a trend that was already happening. Whether or not there's going to be a slowdown on that is the question that's beyond my answer. I certainly have my opinion, but it's an impossible one to know. But that the trend was certainly going this direction already, and there was just an acceleration on it, and especially so for mobile.
Excellent, thanks. And Kristan, staying with you, got another question from one of the attendees. Says, what is the GDPR, privacy laws, impact on advertising on mobile? We see major fines for Google, etc., and crumblings of cookie or programmatic media. Are mobile games ads in much better position?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that IDFA question as well, doesn't it? Right? There's very much a parallel between those two. When I started AdInMo 3.5 years ago, I thought GDPR and COPPA and these types of regulatory frameworks would make IDFA go away. We built the business assuming that we would not have this capability, and I was wrong. I was surprised at how long it took for this to happen. So yeah, like I said, my fundamental belief is that interruptive ads are bad for the gaming experience, but ads in general are a positive for the gaming experience, whether for the advertiser, for the player, or for the game developer who needs to monetize. So I do believe that the tighter regulatory frameworks and further movements by the industry itself to tighten these things up is very much a good thing, both for the industry and for AdInMo in particular.
Excellent, thanks, Kristan. And Juan, one for you. It says, someone asks, will 5G be a boost for mobile games? Will it change the industry?
Well, yeah, as I say, cloud gaming is the killer app for 5G. Actually, yesterday in Chile, they already do they gave the access to 5G to 3 of the operators, the regulator. So Telefónica, Entel, and Juan are going to be able to provide 5G in the country. Uruguay had already launched their 5G through Antel, that is the public telecom operator. We have also 5G in some islands of the Caribbean. Brazil is also through its regulator opening the doors of 5G, and we're really happy with that. But what mostly does 5G is opening a possibility for the users, just to have, as I said before, all the processing power at the cloud, and to get access to a gaming opportunity, to a gaming experience with a low budget tech year, okay? They will have, that here in Latin America and Africa, and I guess in some countries also in Asia, there are different government plans. That means 1 computer per child. So they give 1 computer for every child so they can have access to internet and to technology. Well, 5G and cloud gaming will give access to all those kids with a $100 computer to the best games. So it's not also only an accelerator, but it's the fuel and what it makes it possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would add to that is, no doubt in my mind that in a long enough timeline, the gaming experience will be divorced from the gaming device, which is to say, and again, I will leave the timeline to experts like Juan, but at some point in the future, right, you will be able to play the same gaming experience, whether it's on your phone or your smart TV or your console or your PC or whatever. Like, I believe that to be the case. The limiter remains the ability for us to ingest and digest the data. And again, I live in the downstate New York area. I have a fiber optic connection, and I think I'm just barely at par for cloud gaming right now. Which is to say that for legacy infrastructure, there's maybe some work to be done. Will 5G be the technology that can, kind of finally open this up? I mean, it feels like it might have to be, right? Because, in a world where even where we have good infrastructure, it's not quite fast enough. Again, I'm no expert in terms of how these technologies work, but my guess is setting up more and better, of networks for doing mobile data is probably the way to go. And then I think to the point that Juan was noting, like in developing countries, that might be the only option. So between the two, I think we're going to have to find that nexus that, the biggest limitation on cloud gaming will always be our ability to actually be able to process and transmit the data. And whoever can do that the best will win, and I think revolutionize everything that has to do with cloud gaming.
Excellent, thanks. Kristan, so we've got a question for you. So it says, how is it possible to get a market balance between game monetization and game advertising? It's a bit longer than that, but I'm just going to focus on that part.
I think that's something also that Jonathan alluded to earlier, and I mentioned it. I think Jonathan could probably add some more to this. That is the challenge as a game developer. That is if you're doing free-to-play games, that is one of your biggest challenges beyond just making a game fun and getting it out the door and getting it marketed, is having that balance. And it continues. It is always, if you're doing free-to-play, advertising supported free-to-play, you have this constant balance of monetization and trying to not have it be too intrusive, too interruptive. On the other hand, you have to balance that with churn, retention, all the kind of negative factors there. There's no one answer to that. I mean, it depends on the game. It depends on you as your studio, what you're looking to achieve. there's good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. One of the developers that we worked with, they freely admitted that they implemented normal kind of intrusive in-game advertising very poorly before they brought AdInMo over, and they brought AdInMo into their game, where they actually found that, that putting ads in decreased their revenue overall. Both IAP was not balanced out by ads. On the other hand, as Jonathan said, and this is not an uncommon story, having the right kind of ads in a game is a positive experience for the gamers. It absolutely can be. So yeah, there's no right answer there, and that is the challenge. If you're a free-to-play developer or publisher, that's the big question. All I can say is that there's more than one different way to put those ads in now, and I think there's back to the earliest conversation we had of there's no silver bullet. I think all of these different types of monetization methods, ad monetization methods, can and should coexist for the near term.
Yeah, I believe that all to be true, and I think there's also a bit of an interesting take in terms of what is your vision for monetization from the get-go, i.e. development of the game, right? Because I think at certain points you may want to even structure the mechanics or whatnot to lend more towards a certain monetization technique than others, versus doing a bit of a bolt-on after the fact. And was there a course correction needed? And I think a lot of that has to do with, again, a developer can go into building a game with a very solid idea in terms of how people are going to interact with it or enjoy it or what have you, and be completely wrong. And so what I think that comes back to, and again, highly biased in terms of this take, is that requires ongoing keen insight in terms of your player base and, what are the behaviors and expectations that they have coming into the game, and then what is the best way to align commercialization with that? Because when it becomes misaligned, you're going to have a problem. If you can line it up, then that's where I think you can hit that nice, healthy balance of players still enjoying the game, you being able to, commercialize it properly, and creating, a good potential, synergy between the two, which again, as we've seen in the past, has really demonstrated not only like really good growth for the game itself, but also the advertisers that are in that ecosystem when the advertising is done the right way.
Excellent. Thanks. So we've got about 5 minutes left, and I'm going to pick last two questions. One of them requires you guys to take out your crystal ball and give me a brief answer. And the other one is more of a kind of a fun one to end this webinar. So the first one is, based on your experience, what do you think is going to be the next revolution beyond 5G or cloud gaming? Who wants to start?
As it pertains to gaming more generally?
I didn't specify, but let's talk about gaming. It could be anything to do with gaming.
So again, like I think it's really easy to, go towards like AR or VR, any kind of these flashier techs. And, they're going to have their moment in the sun. And again, I have a number of opinions on them, much of it hinging on that like the user experience hasn't quite caught up with the potentiality of like the immersion that it offers. Like there's still a little bit of a disconnect there. So I don't think we're there yet. Again, my answer is a little less exciting, but I think no less true, is that, and again, this is a mobile panel. I recognize we're all, quite biased, but, I think back to games that I played on the PlayStation 1 across 6 or 7 CDs. It's an app on my phone now, and that's awesome. So I can pull out my phone at any time and play that game that would have required a very elaborate setup to tap into now instantaneously. So you take that for legacy games, and that's kind of exciting. But again, you look at what the potential future of gaming is, and there's a lot to be said there. And, again, some of the interfaces on mobile aren't going to be the best for certain types of games, but as that technology gets that much more powerful, and again, as we've talked about a few times, as the data transfer and what have you gets so much better in terms of the capability to keep up with the fidelity and the power of these games, I'm personally very excited about a world where, again, there's going to be circumstances where I'm going to want to be on my couch and I'm going to want to have a controller and I'm going to want to play a game. That's never going to change. But also I need to go places. Well, not anymore, but like after the pandemic, I need to go places, right? I'm going to be on the subway, I'm going to be on a plane, et cetera. And maybe I want that same experience, and mobile is really ideal for that. So that is exciting to me, that like I could have that same type of experience in the comfort of my home on a couch while I'm on the go. Like that in my mind just feels like something that's really going to be quite cool in terms of what the overall industry can offer. Excellent. Thanks. Juan or Kristan?
Yeah, I'll jump in with a question. I'm breaking out my crystal ball or the magic 8-ball, and it's still kind of saying to me, answer unclear. So, and I look forward to seeing what the answer to this is. Everything that's happening now with this massive court battle between Epic and Apple, I think is really interesting. And I don't know exactly which side of the fence I sit on this, to be very honest, but I think I do see both sides. On the one hand, Apple and Google, with their hegemony of app stores, there is a certain level of quality that they put there. And was it Jonathan, I think, mentioned, because of that, you can assume that games are a brand safe environment because they've already got that imprimatur from Apple or Google. They've checked it. On the other hand, it feels kind of bad as a developer or as a publisher that you only have 2 routes to your market, and it's quite expensive. So I guess my prediction is that however this is resolved will be resolved in the next 12 months. And I suspect it probably will be resolved in some way more favorable to developers, but also I suspect that Apple in particular will make it a huge win for developers, and it may not be quite that win that optically they'll make it seem like.
Thanks. Juan, what would be your prediction?
Okay, well, yeah, this is the guru part, Yep. Okay. Yeah, just following with what I was talking about. Well, maybe I'm going to something more technical, but I would say that decentralizing, this word that we usually use right now, talking about crypto and blockchain. But if we could decentralize the processing power, what I mean is, as Jonathan said before, we still need transmission speed, bandwidth, and low latency for cloud gaming to be something not real, but accurate and perfect for the hardcore gamer to really be willing to play this kind of technology. But if we manage to decentralize the processing capacity and take it to a collaborative model, could be incredible. Just imagine ourselves playing with the processing capacity of our neighbor's console, okay? And we're just 100 meters from our neighbor, or maybe one floor ahead and top. So that would be great, just making this technology possible, because as we said, the technology is the biggest barrier right now, and affordable for many. So that would be great, like the centralization of the processing power.
Excellent. And one last one, very quickly, before we wrap this up, a fun one. What's your favorite mobile game?
I'm going to jump right in, and it's going to sound like I'm a company man, but Diablo Immortal. It's awesome.
What was that?
Diablo Immortal when it comes out, but Hearthstone in the meantime.
Great. Excellent.
I have to say, and sorry, this is probably a little bit embarrassing, but I really like Pokemon Go. I still play it.
I was going to say that.
I think it's a great mix as well, right? It was that early AR. It was a great use of a brand, and we've seen lots of games that have had pretty shitty uses of brands within or IP within the game, and they created some interesting monetization models as well. I'm still exploring that. So yeah, and I play it a lot. I still play it a lot on my phone. So Pokemon Go for me.
Excellent. Juan?
Okay, just for being nationalist, from Argentina, I would say Preguntados, Trivia Crack. That is a play done in Argentina. So I would say that questions and answers game, like the family old games you used to play, but related and casual games for mobiles.
Excellent, thanks. And I'm with Kristan. I was trying to really think hard, and I think no other game made me physically run to places, to catch certain Pokemon like Pokemon Go did. I have really fond memories of that summer in 2016. So I think, I'm going to go with that one as well. Cool. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much to the panel, Juan, Jonathan, Kristan. I really enjoyed the discussion. I hope the attendees found this useful with the insights and everything else, feel free to reach out to us on, be that on Twitter or LinkedIn, whatever. We're online, so find us on there if you've got any other questions. But until then, take care, stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.